Hi, Jem. It's Katie.
Hi, Katie. How are you?
Oh, I'm living the dream. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for your comments. I just feel so bad for your situation.
Uh,
Um, Here's a case where it would be nice to have, a local support group where we can go get those supports and comfort when we go through challenges like you've been through. So if you,
Yeah. So basically, I think I kind of connected the dots of like why I spiraled so bad. I kn I have a core fear of abandonment. It's probably my biggest core fear
mm,
is
yeah,
being abandoned. And so when my husband was in the ICU and he had a 2% survival rate, um, like they basically said, you need to call your wife and tell her you're not going to make it.
wow.
Which he didn't. He didn't want to tell me that. He
Yeah,
was like, yeah. I didn't find I knew though, like I knew in my stomach, like this is not good. But I had to just hold it together to get through it and to like for our son and so then once it was over, like once was able to he made it out of the hospital and he got home. I think, and then I'm trying to like re-engage in like
mm,
full-time work and now caring for him because things have changed. Like he got diagnosed, with a bunch of different ailments. And so our life kind of had to change around that. I think that's when that panic attack came.
yeah,
And because it tapped into that fear of like, I'm going to be abandoned, not like deliberately, like he wasn't deliberately like leaving, but that fear of like I'm gonna lose like the only person that like has ever loved me from me
yeah,
and is my best friend.
yeah,
But then I didn't know that. So then I have that panic attack and then had just came off the benzo again. And that was the only thing that made sense to me, even though it was like 2.5 months later, was like, oh, this has to be connected somehow to coming off this Xanax, even though I've done this so many times.
yeah,
So then I join all the groups, and the groups are horrifying. Like anyone getting off medications, I would like highly advise you to stay away from all of those groups. They're just
yeah,
a horror show, and you're just gonna stay sick, and it's just gonna scare you to death. But it just spiraled me to where I was bedridden and like just oh, it was horrible. And then it's just been nonstop. We're still looking for jobs and can't find, any jobs and like I don't know how we're going to pay our bills and it's just one thing after another. And so I guess like my fear now is how do I move forward to like finding some sort of work, but like my biggest fear is going all the way backwards. Like I know I'm going to have
mm,
setbacks and I know there's going to be bumps and things like that, but like it was traumatizing how bad it got.
yeah,
And I've had anxiety my entire, like since I mean, probably since I was born, but
yeah,
I've had anxiety my entire life. I've had generalized anxiety disorder, but I just lived with it. It was just there. And I could still live life with just the anxiety there. Or like if I would have a symptom pop up here or there, I just ignored it and it went away. Um, but this time was completely different because it was like a panic attack and then like a billion symptoms. And then I joined the benzo groups, thinking
yeah,
that's what it was. And then I was like incapacitated. Um, and so I guess I'm very fearful of going back to like it being that bad.
yeah,
So then I don't want to do anything. I just like avoid doing things,
yeah,
but that's not good either. Like I've been making myself do more things, going out a little more. I rest a lot and do a lot of relaxation, but
mm,
the amount of relaxation compared to just the insurmountable amount of external stressors going on that are out of my control right now is
yeah,
not balancing.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
don't know how to overcome that fear of like, oh my God, I'm going to go all the way backwards and be bedridden again. And
yeah. And that's common when we've had a really difficult experience. I think most people who've been through, moderate and above anxiety disorder have a fear of going backwards to their dark days. I mean, it's
yeah,
understandable. Who wants to go back and do that? Um,
right.
One thing we want to keep in mind is that the more equipped we become to move forward, the less we go back because we just know too much. we don't let ourselves go back. And
Right.
so, this is another part of why I recommend therapy so much, is because as we deal with our underlying factors, we don't go back. I mean, we can have bumpy periods and we can have times when we don't contain as well. And we can have situations in our life that are just plain stressful. I mean, the
Hmm.
last 3 or 4 years, our entire, team had been through some major stressors, health things and just a bunch of other things going on. And it's normal to be anxious during those, but we contain, keep ourselves
Right.
settled, increase relaxation. We do all the things to keep ourselves healthy despite the challenges. And we just don't go backwards, because when you think about going backwards, what takes us backwards is all the fretting. It's all the anxious thinking and the catastrophizing and, doom and glooming. So when we
Hmm.
know that that's what sends us backwards, well, we just get really good at not doing that anymore. You say, no, I'm not going to catastrophize here. I'm going to focus on the facts. I'm going to focus on today. And that's as far as I'm going to go. Even my wife and I have been through some major health things in the last couple of years. Well, we know they could have been serious, but we keep our focus. All right, so what are the facts? Well, we don't know what it is right now, so we're going to wait. No point in worrying about it, because worrying doesn't solve anything. But when you think
No.
about it, worry is supposed to be a protective device. It's supposed to make us aware of danger to take action, right? But if
Right.
you're going through a medical thing and you don't have the results yet, worrying does nothing, because you've already taken action. You've already gone to the doctor, you're getting assessed, and sometimes it takes time. So we just say, no, I'm not going to run down that trail. We'll deal with it when it comes. This is the other part about building resilience. Once you build resilience, you recognize that no matter what comes your way, you're still going to be good. Because when you think about three conditions of fear, right? The third condition is I don't have the ability to protect myself against a threat or to deal with the consequences once a threat has occurred. But if you have resilience, you can say, you know what, this might be difficult, but I can deal with it. Well, that removes a great deal of fear. Or if this is bad, I'm going to find a way to cope with it. Well, that just removes another piece of fear. So building resilience is really important too in overcoming anxiety. So you have had some really difficult experiences going on in your life, no question about it. You have every right to be anxious and stressed just because of all the things that are going on. And they're touching your major fears, right? It's not like little
Right.
fears.
No.
So in this situation, certainly working at containing your anxious mind from running down the worst case scenarios. Because if you think about anxiety disorder, it's all about worry, isn't it? It's all about worry.
Yeah.
Worry's our enemy. If we just got rid of the worry, we'd be fine. And so this is the attack we want to take. I'm not going to worry about this. I'm going to look at the facts. I'm going to, have a game plan in case, and I'm going to be prepared, but I'm not going to run down those worry trails. Because if you do that, there's no way you can go backwards. It's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I know that I'm resilient. I mean, I grew up in a horrific narcissistic abusive situation. I
Mm,
mean, that takes a resilient person to get through that
yeah,
as a child. But
yeah,
unfortunately, it also, instilled a lot of, like people pleasing or
yeah,
no boundaries or just everything that narcissism abuse brings with it.
yeah.
So, but
Trust.
it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, no, yeah,
self-doubt.
trust
Yeah,
issues.
yeah,
But I made it as a child. I made it through that. I made it through like even, I mean, I was probably uh, at the beginning of this in April when it all broke loose, like very, very severe hyperstimulation. Like I was like, wow, what is happening right now? Like I've never experienced anxiety like this, but
yeah,
I still like made it through that, even though it was horrible.
yeah,
But I just don't want to go back there again. And then yeah, just all these, it's like, oh, you gotta get stress reduction, and then there's just like all these external stressors, and I'm like, holy crap.
yeah. How can you do it?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. And then
yeah,
I still have the fear that will pop up of like, oh, but then you still got to taper off your like that will pop up. Oh, you still got to taper off your bend. I'm like, why am I even worrying about this?
yeah,
I've been through. I know what to expect with this. This
yeah,
has never been a fear of mine
yeah,
ever until now. Until now.
yeah,
Now it's like because I'm like, oh well, if I once I taper off, then what if this happens all over again? Which isn't true. I know it's not true
yeah,
deep down because it wasn't the benzo, but still, like that's the fear that will like to kind of like pop up in my head, or the intrusive thought of like, oh well, yeah, you're gonna get through this,
yeah,
and then you get your hyperstimulation down, and be good, and then you're gonna taper off this, and then how hell's gonna break loose again. You have to go through it all over again. It's like
yeah,
no, but I know like logically that's not true.
yeah, yeah. And this is why, going after the worry component is so big because if you deal with that worry component, there's no way you can go backwards. Sure, you can be stressed, but it's not going to be to that dark place because what sent us there is the worry. And when we
Yeah.
contain worry, we don't go there. I mean, this is quite common, a person coming out of anxiety disorder recovery, because we had been in some dark places. Certainly I was. You read my
Hmm.
story, it was bad.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of times I was looking over my shoulder as I was recovering. And even when I broke free of the benzo and I gained complete control of my body, there were still moments when I thought, man, I don't want to go back there again. And then sometimes you sort of run down that, the favorite worry trail, and I'd stop myself and say, Jim, what are you doing? Look what you
Yeah.
just did. Here you are again, creating the same problem. Stop doing it. So,
Right.
and that anchored my skills. And the more, proficient I got at doing that, well, I didn't run the worry trails anymore. And over the course of time, you just forget about it because the more successful you are, your mind focuses on that. And you do get to a place of realizing, I can't go backwards. I know what got me there. I'm really good at stopping it. So there's no way I can go backwards. So while you're working through this yourself, there's just like the others I was talking about, there still needs to be some personal experience and time, but you will get to that place where you realize you can't go back there. So in the meantime, I would encourage you not to let the fear spook you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see how I got myself there. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I reacted terribly. There was no pass. I mean, talk about second, don't trigger second fears. It was like second, third, fourth, fifth, 100 fears a day for like
Yep.
40 days straight of being like, oh my gosh, I have permanent brain damage and I'm never going to heal. And because that's what all the groups say, or they'll be like, oh, you kindled. And that's why it's so hard
Yeah.
this time. And I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. I should have kindled 3 attempts ago then.
That's right. Yeah.
And I was good. I went through 2 weeks of withdrawal, no big deal. And then I was fine.
Yeah.
Right. Until I think it was like, oh my gosh, and all the stressor. Like I know my husband's going to live now. But that just triggered my biggest underlying factor, fear of like, I was almost abandoned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would be one of the, as you're working with your therapist, dealing with your major fears. And abandonment would be one, because you can get to a place where that doesn't have to be a fear anymore. I mean, we have to be
Yeah.
realistic. None of us have any guarantees for tomorrow. It's just how life is. The more
Right.
prepared you are to deal with the uncertainties and adversities, the less anxious we're going to be. Now, no one likes to go through these things, but all of us in our lives have faced challenges that were pretty difficult. I mean, if I look at all these people on our call today, I would bet most of them, if not all, have been through some really horrendous experiences growing up. And you're right, we
Hmm.
did make it. And unfortunately, we do start in a hole because of that, but we are survivors. And no matter what comes our way, we can survive. And this is, for me, is where my spiritual beliefs really helped me get over my medical fears, is because I
Right.
realized that, life is temporary. This is how it's supposed to be. We're going to have hardship, but beyond this, it's going to be great joy. So this is like a bad dream. I'll get through it, looking forward to what's coming. So that's been huge in my life to get rid of some of the medical fears, the abandonment stuff, the difficult adversities and things like that. And I even see it in my wife. She's had to deal with extreme pain for a long time. She's
Hmm.
just a trooper. She just keeps on trucking on, and she'll let me know she's in pain every once in a while, but she keeps on going. And when we talk about it, it's because we know that this is temporary. We know that there is going to be an end, that our great joy is coming. And this is like, again, a temporary dream in the space of all eternity. So, looking at your spiritual side can also help with the abandonment and things. Also thing too with, the jobs. I'm not sure, where you are with your faith, but, for me, that used to be huge, being able to provide. But then I realized, I had given my life to God, and He's in charge of me, and He's in charge of whatever He brings in and takes out. And I know that He has a good purpose in it all. So I don't have to worry about what's coming next because I know He's in charge. And so for you, you might want to be praying about, Lord, we're struggling here. We need some opportunities. We're trusting in you to get us through this, because that can also reduce a great deal of anxiety, especially when you look at the third condition, right? If you realize that God can intervene at any particular moment, even in your darkest hour, we don't have to feel complete despair because we know that there is a resource that's bigger than us.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And yeah, he's always provided. I mean, there was other times where we were almost like evicted and it just looked hopeless. And then at the last minute, like a miracle happened. And I used to actually make Facebook videos, like sharing my struggles of anxiety with other people to try to help them. And it was
Mhm.
eye-opening to look back at my old videos. It was almost like I was talking to myself, like, like giving myself encouragement again, like, it's okay, God's got you. Like, I know you're struggling, but you'll get through this. Like, so, like telling this to other people, and now I'm watching my old videos, like almost to myself, like, it's okay, you got this, like everything will work out. But
Yeah.
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 All
So,
right.
well, my wife and I'll put you on our prayer list
Thank you
as
so
well
much.
to, get things moving. You had a tough year, and
Yeah.
yeah, so we'll put you on our prayer list and certainly keep us updated in terms of how things go.
Okay.
But be patient with yourself. This is going to
Yeah.
take time to move through. I wouldn't concern yourself at all with the benzo. You've already
Yeah.
had that experience, and so that discomfort's there for a short period, and then we're good. So I
Yeah.
would give it a second thought. And I've helped a lot of people come off benzos, and I just don't see the horror stories people talk about when they're well equipped. So I wouldn't
Thank
even
goodness.
concern yourself with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Those discussion
100%.
forums are often are awful for that. It's just a
So,
self-perpetuating problem with one person scaring the next. So,
Jim, how many people would you say you've helped? I know if you had to give a number roughly.
oh my word, started working with clients in 2004 and stopped in 2017. So, it's a lot of people.
Many hundreds.
It's been a lot. Yeah, I have a
Yeah.
long list of ex-clients, and thankfully, a lot of them, will keep in touch every once in a while, let me know how they're doing. So, and a lot of them are doing great. So, and we have a team of therapists who've also seen these experiences, and there's a lot of experience with
Well,
them
that's
as
why I
well.
ask, because it helps you contain, because most people don't do the right work. They just blame everything on the
Yep,
pills. But knowing that
yeah.
you and all the
Yeah.
other therapists have seen
Yep.
countless, you've seen it all essentially. So
yep,
to help you know that, okay, what's actually may or may not be from the medication versus what's the underlying issue, it helps to contain. So that's why I
yep,
ask.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We
Yeah.
just see a lot of it, the same things, and so this is one of the reasons our material probably is not published as much in the general, bulletins and research is because we've seen practical experience of how things work. For example, when I was recovering from anxiety disorder, had I believed in the genetic thing or the biological or the chemical thing, I never would have recovered. But I thought there's got to be something wrong here. And when back then, the research was all pointing to all those things. You couldn't find research that disagreed. But as I recovered and when I realized what I did to recover, it's like, I never got a gene transplant. I never infused myself with brain chemicals. What I did is change my behavior and got my stress down. And so I thought there's got to be something wrong here. And so through, the 1980s and 90s, when David Burns became popular, he was saying the same thing. He said, this is not chemical. The chemical imbalance thing is a farce. And of course, there was a number of us saying the same things, but the research was still all saying, no, it's chemical imbalance. You need drugs, yada, yada, yada. But we
Yeah, big
persevered
pharma.
because, yeah, we persevered because we saw the practical evidence over and over and over and over again. And of course, thankfully over the last 10, 15 years, all that nonsense has been, washed away, although you'll still hear it from doctors. But it is all behavioral, same with coming off the drugs. Now, there are some medications I do not recommend because they do and can cause permanent harm. And the ones that I would highly recommend staying away from is Prozac. And Prozac Paxil is another one we don't recommend just because we do know there's instances where there has been brain changes that have been permanent, and we experienced that with a family member directly. And so, when you look at the lawsuits against them, you can see why. But the other medications are pretty innocuous for the most part. Effexor's more difficult to come off because it has two agents in it. But the Zolofts and the Lexapros and the Celexas and even the benzos. The benzos cause some upsetness for the first few weeks, and then it's cleared. So yeah, I just wouldn't be spending too much time worrying about the medication stuff. And I know I'm going to probably get pushback from a lot of people who are still struggling. But if you do it the behaviors, you'll realize it yourself. You just have nothing to worry about once you got the behaviors done.
Yeah, I've been trying to spread that information to the benzo, to some people that I've met in the benzo community, that I'm not in the community anymore because I'm like this, but I made a couple friends in there, and I've been trying to tell them, like, you're dealing with hyperstimulation, like you've been off your benzo for like a very long time, like and like I can see their anxious behaviors. I can see, like, I can see where they're scaring themselves and they're worrying about everything, and if they're still in the groups, especially, like, you are not going to heal in these groups. They are horrifying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So yeah, I've had a couple of friends that are like, oh, thank God, like, because it'll have you like, and I don't know how it is with like SSRI community. I'm sure it's just as terrifying, but in
Same
the
thing.
mental community, it's
You
like
see
you
everyone
got
gets
permanent,
scary.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
you got permanent brain damage. You're never going to heal. You're going to be in protracted for 20 years. And it's like, that's so hopeless.
Yep.
Like like if you think you have brain damage and like this is it, like that's so hopeless. And people are like literally taking their lives over this. And like, I just
Yeah.
hate these
No.
groups so much. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree as well. Same experience here.
Yep.
yeah,
Just some Google searches, and then it's like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
horrific.
Yeah.
yeah. And I can promise you, like, I've been on and off benzos 5 times. It is not that bad. Like
Yep.
it's not fun, but it's not as horrifying as these people make it out to
Yeah.
be. And what they're dealing with is hyperstimulation. Like all the symptoms, the up and down healing process, like all of it is identical. They're dealing with hyperstimulation and anxious
Mm,
behaviors. This is not the benzo at all. I've done this 5 times now,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
this is hyperstimulation.
Yeah.
And also one more thing, because I gathered a lot of containment statements regarding that with Jim.
I'd imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Honestly, Jim is so right. If you think about it logically, okay, if let's assume that it was the benzo. If it's brain damage, symptoms should not go down during the evening. But they do go
correct.
down during the evening, and they do go down during the evening with a cortisol cycle with hyperstimulation. And when you ask these people and see how they heal, the trajectory of the healing is identical to hyperstimulation healing.
Yeah.
And then you have also the other facts that are if they did the brain damage thing, right? They would cause the same, like that's the one Jim told me. They would cause like these motor problems.
Yeah.
And why don't they have motor problems anymore? Well, it doesn't make sense, right? They logically they would still need to continue, but they don't when you
Yeah.
come off, and they're
Yeah.
just hyperstimulation symptoms. So there's like many things you can use as evidence to counter that threat.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to add, Katie, you're the one in the group like messaging back and forth with me and
Yeah,
Jim, right?
That's right.
yeah, yep.
Thank you so much for the help. It's been
Oh,
invaluable.
no, you're
So
welcome.
much.
I just want you to know that you're going to be okay. Like, it's not that's just don't listen to the horror stories. Like they are dealing with hyperstimulation. I don't have
Yeah.
brain damage and don't cold turkey, but I have cold turkeyed 5 times and been okay
Yeah.
after 2 weeks and been completely fine. And this is after years of use each time. So
Yeah.
you'll
I
be
just
fine.
wanted I just wanted to like give back by saying about hyperstimulation because the things you said before, like you spiraled and you're so afraid to go back there.
Yeah,
I can guarantee you, as someone who's been through this 6 times, and each
yeah,
time was a little bit different. Each time was a little bit different in terms of how I managed it. But I
yeah,
have enough evidence to tell you, and they've never touched a benzo before this, you know. But I
yeah,
have enough evidence to tell you that it's the darn fears. It's nothing
yeah,
more. Because Jim says it's all about worry, obviously, and it is. But worry is fear based. If you contain the fear, like I've had instances that I got hyperstimulated again, and I was like, oh wow, I got into a rebound again. Oh my gosh, right? And
right,
then I discovered something in like the first 2 or 3 weeks that calmed me down like a lot. And you'll see that also with other members on the website. They say, how come I feel so good after I read the materials to Jim? They ask him, right? And like they finally understand, oh, it's just stress. Just like, okay. And like if they buy into it, you know what I mean? But
right.
I promise you that fear is the worst stressor times a million.
Yeah.
Yes,
That like it's that powerful. It can make you go from mild hyperstimulation to severe, and
yeah,
the opposite, and also the opposite, because it's like you have a wound, and fear is like the thing, like you scratch the wound very hard, so you're gonna experience a lot of pain, so to speak, as a metaphor.
yeah.
But if you remove the scratching part, the wound is way more manageable. It's like, and it's almost like not instantaneous, but it's like very like you're gonna see your recovery like become much faster if you remove big fears.
Thank you
Like
so much for that.
I
Yeah, I
just
agree.
wanted to point that out.
Fear is the main thing that will get hyperstimulation going and keep it going no matter you can do all the relaxation in the world, but if you're
Yep.
fearful, it gets the body going. It's fast.
Yeah,
I agree, faster than literally anything because it's our body, it's the highest degree threat we can experience when we're fearful. So
Yeah. Thank you so much, both of you, for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the
I'm
stories you
impressed.
tell yourself too. It's
It
the
is.
stories
Yep.
that generate the fear.
Yeah. And just the fact that you've been through hyperstimulation, what do you say, 6 times now? That's
Yeah. This
shows
is the
like
sixth.
so much strength. Like you'll have no issues with benzo withdrawal. Like I promise you, like
Yeah.
you'll be like, that was so simple compared to like if you can beat hyperstimulation 6 times, you'll be like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, this was nothing. Like
Yeah.
this, okay. Like,
Yeah, and I promise you, this is exactly why Jim is saying deal with your underlying factors and keep
yeah.
also. I'm adding one more tip: keep notes because
Yeah.
like the brain, right? Like when you're more stressed, some old
Yeah.
fears pop up, and you're like, hey, I thought I dealt with you already. Why are you here? You know. So,
Right.
but it's just a brain function. It's nothing more than that.